Hello there, my name is Klaus Hostel and I'm doing 100 innovation keynotes in 100 days. Today is number 70, and today I'm going to talk about innovating in very efficient spaces. Now this is a symbol that is recognized by most of us around the world. It is McDonald's. In 1955, it took roughly, and this is roughly, 30 minutes to get a burger made at a drive-in joint. Now, this was not true at McDonald's because McDonald's had introduced the Speedy system, developed by the brothers McDonald in 1948. There's a lovely movie about it called The Founder, blah, 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 blah. What it meant was that what used to be 30 minutes to get your burger, they could make that enormously much faster. Whether they used a minute or 2 minutes isn't really relevant, but they could do it so much faster, which means that in 2021, you go to McDonald's and they do your thing in 60 seconds, maybe even less if they're really fast. So 30 minutes to 60 seconds, maybe in 30 seconds somewhere, huge improvement. This is Malcolm Mclean, and this is from 1956. Malcolm Mclean is known mostly, he probably did other interesting stuff, but he's mostly known for being like the guy who invented container shipping, or at least who created the whole container shipping concept. And that meant that Malcolm Mclean and his ideas took a shipping cost that used to be, I think this is per ton, something. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that in 1956, in modern day dollars, this cost was 55.58. Again, whether it's a ton doesn't really matter. What matters is that in 2021, and actually this is 2005 data, so this is even 16-year-old data I'm using because that's what I found, cost 21 cents. $55 down to 21 cents. That's a pretty crazy improvement on efficiency because of container shipping. This guy, I happen to have a passion for trains, and this guy, Chris Tarrant, an English TV host, travels all over the world and has a TV series called Extreme Railways. And he's basically a grumpy but lovable old Englishman who travels on trains and is passionate about trains. Love watching that sort of stuff. Brilliant. Now, at one of the episodes, Chris visited the Congo. Or it feels wrong to call him Chris. Let's call him Mr. Tarrant because he's that kind of guy. Mr. Tarrant visited the Congo, and the train there was delayed for days. There's this lovely footage of him going to the train station, and like there's a train coming in, there's another. It just goes on, and at some point he realized it's not just going to be hours late. It's not even coming this day. And at the end, the train is days late. This is one of those big trains that travels a long while through inhospitable areas, and they have a breakdown during dramatic episode. Lovely, lovely TV, but seeing on his face when he realizes this train is going to be days late. He also visits Switzerland at some point where they are minutes late, and there's some sort of statistic, roughly 90% of Swiss trains, I think this is like 2017, 2018 or so, ran on time, and on time being defined as within 3 minutes of their planned departure. 90% within 3 minutes of planned departure. Minutes rather than days. Now, why am I showing you this? I'm showing you this because innovating in efficient spots is very hard. If you travel to the Congo and say, okay, this railway line, we're going to get into shape. We may not get it to Swiss levels, but we're going to make those days into half days or into hours. But if you go to Switzerland and say, okay, at 90%, we're going to take it to 95. It's going to be a horrible amount of work. It's going to be so hard unless you find something new, some paradigm shift. And even then, it's going to be tricky. Malcolm Mclean's 55.50 whatever dollars down to 20 cents. If you go there now, I don't even know how much that is in percent, but it's a lot. And if you go, I know, I'm not going to calculate. But if you go there now and say, let's make those 20% into the equivalent amount, that's going to be really tricky. And if you look at like how much of the price goes from shipping, it's nothing. There was a guy who I know who is kind of a leader in a big transport company. And somebody in his company had come up with some way to make something in the company more sustainable. I think it was like office computers or office air conditioning. It was something that was like, yes, this is great, and we can make it so much better, and woo, we can get like 50% increase in our sustainability, and was really excited. And then somebody said, that's great. How much of our total CO2 kind of environmental impact comes from this specific thing? Well, calculation, maybe like 0.5% or less than. So even if they made huge strides here, it wouldn't have any effect whatsoever on the big picture because it was already a tiny thing. We love the people who make those, who take us from 90% to 93, from 93 to 94.6, from 94 to etc. We love that. Right now there's the corona vaccine that is kind of being distributed unevenly and unequally around the world, and somebody who says we have a vaccine that's no longer 92% kind of effective, but 94 is like, oh, that's nice, and 97, woo, woo, woo. But it's really hard to go from 92 to 94 and 97 compared to going from 10 to 20 or from 10 to 50 sometimes even. So we love the people who take us there, get us that step closer to perfection, but it's tough. And I want you to consider, ask yourself, what is it that you do and how far are you from the bottom? How far are you from the bottom price possible, or from the bottom time possible, or how close are you to zero in whatever sort of zero makes sense for you? I have a stepfather who's a computer scientist, and ironically so is my father. Apparently my mother liked that sort of profession. But one thing that, and I can't remember which of them, that's why I mentioned both. One thing one of them explained at one point was that there's a certain time in computing when processors get so fast, there's a certain kind of point when they start getting closer and closer to light speed. I can't remember if it was something like a third of light speed. There's something in a computer, don't ask me how that works precisely, something in the I'm not going to get into it. It'll be wrong. Something that is getting closer and closer to an absolute value, in this case the speed of light, that it's getting really hard to improve. Where for many years you could improve by making it faster and faster and faster, but now you have to do different things. You have to kind of scale. So now you have several cores instead of one, or you're doing something with a different part of the computer. Because once you reach those absolutes, those zeros, or in this case the speed of light, which is not zero, but is pretty hard to beat, then you run into problems. Then you run into like you're pushing hard against something. And in this case, the race to the bottom, which is usually where you're going with like price or time or something like that. And the bottom of what? There'll be something in your industry, in your field that makes sense that you're racing towards. Whether it's flight time or whether it's accidents or I don't know what it is. But there'll be something that makes sense. And then look, can we make big changes instead of small ones? Can we look at something else and do big changes there instead of small incremental ones? Or is it good enough? Are we in a space where it's great to go from 96% to 97%? I don't know. That was one slide too fast because there's a final point to be made. And that point is that there's so many people out there that I meet, usually in creative spaces, but not necessarily, who would rather spend so much time, so much energy, so much money, so much frustration and passion on trying to improve a little bit in something that they see and they like and they know, they're comfortable with, they measure, than doing the hard work and improving a lot on something they have no grasp of, no idea, even if that would have a bigger impact overall. Then they chase that. How do they get that McDonald's burger down to 28 seconds instead of 29? Instead of thinking, well, maybe if we want to improve our McDonald's, we don't need to do faster burgers because they're already pretty fast. Maybe we should look at something else. So sometimes small innovation, small improvements are good enough. But oftentimes there are big changes to be made, big wins to be made, if you look a little bit to the side. And that, well, that's a pretty important innovation question. Are you looking straight on what you're doing, or are you looking to the side? Or have you done like the McDonald brothers and their Speedy system, like Malcolm Mclean, Have you found something where like, oh, I can disrupt this, the main thing, big time, because there's inefficiency or just waiting to be exploited. There's something just waiting to happen. Well, you're the boss, but remember, it can be pretty tricky to take the tough spaces and innovate further there.